Hello and welcome back. We are in week 10 now. 9 was the break. I'm hoping that you got a little bit of time off, some stuff, come back fresh, strong. We've got 5, 6 weeks left of this semester. Time to really buckle down and have a really great finish. So we enter into chapter 7 this week in my series, my trifecta of reading, writing, and arithmetic. And yes, there is math involved in psychology. I don't want you to get too distressed about that. Math is a good thing. Math is your friend. And math, for the most part, in a lot of studies that you see, actually provides the strength of your argument. This is essentially the notion of show me the numbers, show me what's going on, show me, prove to me that what you're saying is true. We ask for the numbers. Now, there's a lot of mistrust associated with statistics, and it's not misguided. How statistics are used, how statistics are presented, I would say it's much like the argument that we might say for guns. Now, I'm not a big gun lobbyist or anything, but we do have a Second Amendment. And in the end, it's not necessarily the gun per se, but it's how people use it. Statistics, it's not necessarily something wrong with statistics, there's something wrong with people who use it wrong. Now, we probably need to keep people who use statistics wrong away from statistics, just like we need to keep people who are using guns wrong away from guns. That's another day for that particular argument. But my analogy rests. Statistics is a tool, it can be manipulated. However, now that you are on the pathway to understanding how statistics actually happen, its limitations, its strengths, you are now going to become a better consumer of the public statistics that are out there. You're going to get a statistics over the news. You're going to get a piece of data over the news. You're going to say, what was the sample like? Who did this? Was there any bias in the conclusions? Did they use the correct statistical tool? Did they even mention that this is statistically significant? Are they making causality out of correlation, which is what we're going to be talking about today? You'll have all of these questions and you'll understand, and you'll be less likely to be drawn in to the ways in which people use statistics to try and influence you in ways that are evil. So, here we are in chapter 7. That first problem that I said about the people who use statistics, there is also the revelation of a problem within the field of psychology. And it may be the reliance on statistical significance as the win all golden key to valid ideas. It might be the type of sampling that has been going on for generations in the field of psychology. But it seems like many of the classic experiments that have really defined the fund of knowledge that we talk about in psychology are currently being challenged. Now, the real component of that, there might be nothing wrong with those previous studies, but humanity is changing. So those assumptions and those conclusions that we came to with all of those classic studies over the years, we have to keep redoing them to see if they're still true. However, when science itself turns a critical eye to its own procedures, there can sometimes be a pendulum that swings and like, oh, psychology has nothing to say, and all that stuff. That's not true. However, there is now in place a lot of procedures and whatnot having to do with keeping science within social sciences very, very accountable. Those procedures are starting to make themselves present in the way in which publication happens. There's still that gap between publication and how it reaches the public, and that's unregulated for the most part, but that is the way of our world. I say this because there's an article in the attention section of this chapter, I would like you to read that article. It's a little old, so when it talks about current research, it's kind of talking about something 8 years old, kind of thing in the world of science. That's kind of old, but the point is still relevant. And the procedures that they suggest to address this are what's going on today. It's really very good article to read about that, and that is the point of our discussion. So the other thing to do this week is the assignment, and the assignment has to do with you playing with some numbers, doing some math. Now, because I'm anticipating that all of you are eventually going to be taking statistics for psychology from me in this program, I am orienting this particular assignment in the same way that I orient my expectations within the statistics for psychology class, and that is we are going to be using the Microsoft program called Excel. Now, Excel is a spreadsheet program, but underneath it is an incredible amount of computational power that gives Excel some incredible and very reliable statistical tools for us to use. The joy of it is that it's available for you as a KVCC student for free. Now, I am going on information that has been told to me by the IT folks that you as students have access to Microsoft Office, or Office, I think it's Microsoft 365 is what it's called. Now, usually, many of you used to doing things on the cloud, you use the online tools of Microsoft 365 and you store all of your documents in the cloud. So the problem with that is the statistical tools, the most powerful and easy to use statistical tools within the Microsoft suite are not available in the online version. So you have to download the application, the actual Excel application, maybe the whole Office application to your computer. You download that, and the tools that are available in the downloadable version of that application align with my expectations for this assignment. So for some of you, you're facing a little bit of a wall. Maybe you have a Chromebook. It's time to throw that away. I know you love it. It's okay. Keep it for other things. And it's time to get a computer that can run native applications from Microsoft. Word, PowerPoint, Excel. Getting that computer, making sure that you have that computer. It's also time to get rid of Google Docs. I know you love them. Those are not professional tools. They're not used in the professional world and within psychology other than informal communication. We will be, from this point on, operating on the expectation that you have access to Microsoft 365. That's why we purchased a license for you, so that we can have that expectation. So this is a little bit of a challenge, and I understand that. I understand moving from one tool to the next. But I can't teach you how to use all these tools, and many of those tools, the great and phenomenal and wonderful Google Docs suite, doesn't have the same sort of statistical power that I need you to be able to demonstrate in this program. So mastering this suite of tools, Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, is a core learning outcome within the psychology program. So now's the time. We've come to this time in the program where we're going to be looking at Excel. And my expectation is that you are going to be sending me a file in Excel format. You'll be saving that document to your computer and uploading that document to the Dropbox. That is, all of the assignments within the Statistics for Psychology class operate that way. I'm flexible on when you get this done. If you are running into trouble getting that computer, finding a computer that you can do that on, getting the application, which I have been assured by IT, you can do. You can download the suite. You're not limited to just using the online version of Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. They have told me that all of our students have that capacity to do that download. This may require you to reach out to IT to get some help, or maybe just find a 14-year-old around somewhere and have them do it. They will probably know how to do it. So the expectations is that's what you are using to complete this assignment, and I'm going to move forward with that expectation. So in this assignment, I'm introducing you to the concept of two of the various kinds of statistical tools that we use all the time within the field of psychology, and that is descriptive statistics and then correlations, which technically speaking is a descriptive statistic, but one of the things that we can gain from a correlation is another tool that comes from that read, the deeper read of a correlation is actually called a regression. And the regression is we are able to then predict. If we know one variable, we can predict the other. Simple as that. So we start off with the idea of descriptive statistics. Now, when we set out to study something in psychology, I want you to recall the original goals of psychology. This is covered in the intro class, also covered here. And that is to describe, explain, predict, and control. And here we're going to see where statistics come to the front. Statistics does a really good job at describing. Not so much on explaining, but then really good on predicting. So those two, the first goal, describe, and the third goal, predict, or we get descriptive statistics and correlations and regressions. Let's see how we're going to work with those. The descriptive statistics tend to focus on two parameters. The first is middleness, and the second is variability. And there's all kinds of different ways in which we measure that. You're familiar with middleness because you know what an average. You have a bunch of scores. What's the average score? There's another couple of those. There's the mean. We call that the mean. Sorry, the average is actually the mean. Then we have the median, which is if you line up all the scores in order, it's the middle one. And then we have the mode, which is an interesting middleness because it's the score that appears the most is the mode. And then you could be multimodal. You could have a number of different scores that appear the most. Okay, so those are the ideas behind central tendency or middleness. Then we have variability. How different are the scores? Do the scores vary from a very low number to a very high number? Or do they vary from, the lowest number and the highest number are pretty close together? Call that the range. Okay. Then there's the sort of distribution of those scores. If we graph them, would there be frequency bumps of each score that are kind of even along there, or do they all kind of center in the middle? And we call that variance. And one of the most common measures of variance that we have is called standard deviation, which is, try to put this as simply as possible. You will learn way more about it. Standard deviation. Standard refers to the average. Deviation means the difference. So it's the average difference between each score and the mean. So you have the average score, the mean, and then all the other scores, how far are they away from that mean? And we take all those numbers, but how far they are away from the mean, and we average those numbers, and it gives us what we call the standard deviation. There's a formula for it, kind of a complicated formula, but Excel does it for us. The next thing that we're going to look at is going to be the correlation. Now, the correlation takes two sets of numbers and it compares them in a way to describe their relationship to each other. Now, what it means is there's a ratio that occurs between one set of numbers and the other set of numbers. And to the degree to which those numbers move in predictable ways in relation to each other is the degree to which there's a correlation. Now, because it's a ratio, first and foremost, we know that a correlation, the actual, what it's called is the Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. Let's just call it a correlation, shall we? The correlation number is somewhere between -1 and +1. There's no such thing as a 2.5 correlation. Doesn't exist. It's all point something. And the more a correlation coefficient is toward +1 or -1 on either direction of the number line, the stronger that correlation is. Now let me explain the plus and minus. Two numbers that are negatively correlated to each other. They're along that negative number line. Weak or strong. What that means is as one number goes up, the other one tends to go down. They move in opposite directions. Think of the amount of hours that you spend playing video games and your GPA. More hours playing video games, on average, less likely to have good grades. Okay, so those move. Less hours on video games, higher grades. They tend to move in opposite directions. That data would tend to have a negative correlation. The positive correlation means that one number moves in the same direction as the other to some degree. Doesn't it? A strong correlation, they will move very much in line. A weak correlation, one will move up, but there's definitely a way in which they move together. An example could be the number of hours that you spend studying and your GPA. So more hours, higher GPA. Less hours, low GPA. Now we know there's an ultimate too much studying. We understand that. But for the sake of our argument right now, let's just stick with that as our example of a positive correlation. I've given you some data in the assignment. Basically, you're looking at heart rate, which in this particular experiment is the operational definition for stress. There's lots of ways to measure stress. We're just going to use that one for the sake of this experiment. So we've taken everybody's heartbeat, their heart rate, and we put that down as the score. Then they took a test, and we have the scores to that test. And we want to see, ultimately, the research question is, does stress going into a test, as measured by heart rate, affect the outcome? Now that word affect is a curious one at this point in the game. When we are looking at a correlation, we are simply trying to figure out if we're just trying to figure out if there's a relationship. Now there's two ways this can go. High rates of stress could result in high rates of performance. They can move together. Or high rates of stress could lower performance. You might think that that could be one of the reasons. Those are our hypotheses. We could say that could go either way. We're going to take a test. We're going to do the study. We're going to see what happens. However, no matter what our results are, at this point in the game, until we do much more research, start doing some experiments, all we know is that there's a correlation. That does not mean that heart rate or stress causes the grades. They are correlated. That's it. What it indicates is that we can now move forward in the bigger question of how stress affects performance, and we can start conducting some experiments. Drill down to make sure that we understand that there's a cause-effect relationship. But you'll hear it all the time. Correlation is not causation. So, the assignment is for you to install Excel, to follow the screenshots that I have in the course book about activating the statistical tools built in to the downloadable version of Excel. Screenshots that I have are from a Mac. You might have to look around to find where those things are. And don't be fooled. There's two data analysis packages within the software of Excel. You want to make sure that you get the right one. And that right one, make sure I get the name correct here in the screenshots, The screenshots are in the description of the assignment. I'm looking analysis tool pack. This is different than data analysis, which is another tool in there. Don't use that one. It's confusing. I don't like it. Horrible. Doesn't match any of the screenshots that I have here. So what you're looking to install, the analysis tool pack. This is built in to Excel, but you need to turn it on. You're then going to use that interface to select your data, select each column of that data. You're going to select the heart rate, and you're going to select the test scores, and you're going to produce tables of descriptive data for each one of those. So you're going to have an average, you're going to have the mean, median, mode, variance, you're going to have standard deviation, you're going to have kurtosis, you're going to have a whole bunch of other statistics that you don't need to understand, but you're going to have tables with numbers on them, and that's going to be a description of that column of heart rate across all 10 subjects. You're going to do the same thing for scores. As psychologists, we do that kind of describing of the data to meet that first goal within the field of psychology, to describe human experience and our observations. You're then following the instructions. You're going to insert a formula. Probably it's the easier way to do it. The toolkit has correlations in it, but I actually like doing the formula. You can look this up. You can look up on the web. I'm not sure if I inserted a video on it. Oh yeah, I have Excel for statistics there. There's videos and there's all. You can just look up YouTube videos. How do I calculate a correlation in Excel? It's going to walk you right through the whole thing. And that number is going to tell you from a range of -1 to +1, what is the relationship between those two numbers. Remember, if it's a positive number, they move together. If it's a high positive number, it's a positive correlation. If it's a negative number, they move apart from each other in opposite directions. And if it's a very strong correlation, it'd be very close to -1 or closer to -1. So you have to find that out. So you're going to have descriptive statistics. You're going to have, and then the correlation. And then you're going to insert a text box. Don't just click in one of the cells. Insert a text box. You can expand it out. And within that text box, you have all the tools that you would have in Microsoft Word. You can make things, you can highlight, you can go bold, you can do all those things. And I want you to write out what you discovered about the relationship between stress as measured by heart rate and performance as measured by the scores in that test. Okay, so that brings us to the formatting of documents. Now, I prepared a little slideshow for this. I'm going to show you. Again, we're upping the game here. From this point forward, you'll love this. When we create files on our computer, we give them a name. Now, when I am asking for PowerPoints and Excel files, what I tend to do is I go into Brightspace and I download all of them. And then I play them on my computer. I play the slideshow or I look up the Excel file. There is a way, there's a file conversion within Brightspace, but it makes PowerPoint pictures look weird, makes PowerPoint look weird, and I don't see your notes, and it doesn't do any justice at all to Excel. So I need to download those files. Now, in order to keep it clear, I want to know whose file is which. Now, there's ways for me to do that, but there's also ways for you to make that easier. And that is, how do you save that file name? What you call the document. You may have your own system to do that, to organize and save all of your files and all that stuff. But I'm going to ask you to adopt my system for the Excel files. So here is the file naming strategy that I want you to adopt. Here's an example of a document, the name of a document that I would submit for this assignment. This is the Chapter 7 assignment in Psych 102, and you have my name there. It's an Excel file, so it's XLS or it's XLSX, depending on which version of Excel that you're using. This is the format that I want to have things come into because the first item is your last name. The next item is your first initial. That's what I want to see. Notice this is connected with a hyphen between each one of these spaces, and those are the only places that there are spaces. Don't put spaces because Brightspace freaks out about those. Okay, so you have your last name, first initial. When I download these files, they all appear in alphabetical order. And it's just like your grades appear in alphabetical order on my end of things. So, great thing. Then, which class is it? It's Psych 102. Could be Psych 224. Could be Psych 101. Any one of those. And then, the assignment. Chapter 07. I'm sort of flexible about what you call this. If you want to call it assignment 7, or if you want to chapter 7 or something like that. Probably want to keep it pretty simple. Don't make these names really long. Again, Brightspace freaks out about that. Okay, so this file, that's the name of the file that you upload to the Dropbox. You notice over here you have the file extension. In this case, it's an Excel file. You'll also see doc files. You'll also see PowerPoint files. Now, one other thing that I do, and this is just a tip, how to keep track of all kinds of documents. Now, for each major aspect of my life, I have folders and subfolders within there on my computer. Okay? Within those folders, when I'm saving a file, I actually add something to the front of that. I don't want you to do this to the file that you send me. It's just a tip on how for you to keep track of all your files that you're making, that you're doing here at KVCC. I add the date. So over here, I put the date in front, and I want you to notice the actual format of this. I have the 2 number year, and then I have the month, and then I have the day. So this file sitting on my computer was created in March 17th, 2025. I created it for Psych 102, Garden Chapter 07. When I put this file in a folder, it orders those files by when I created them. The name actually, even if there's multiple years, multiple months, when you have the year, the month, and the day, it keeps everything in order. Very good. Order is good. Order is good. So, back to this. I want the top one when you send me this file. Bottom one is a hint on how I organize all my files. And there are literally thousands of them. And this system has allowed me to locate, subfolders and folders and what. I do the same thing in my email, all of that. I have subfolders and whatnot so I can find information quickly. And so, just a piece of advice. That's it. That's the word I was looking for. Advice. Okay, all that for this week. And we also have the part 3 discussion from Pinker's book. So we are going to be looking at a discussion related to inequality. And when is inequality right? We don't all want to be the same. And some people who work hard, or maybe they're gifted and lucky and maybe we're jealous of them, but those individuals are not like us. They excel. They do. Maybe you excel at things. And that inequality, hard work, perseverance, grit, all that, which is what separates you from others and makes you get a better job and all those things. There's room for inequality. So what are we talking about when we talk about inequality being a bad thing? Let's read what Pinker has to say about that, and then let's have a discussion about the good and bad, maybe the ugly, about inequality. So, I'll see you on those discussions. Looking forward to the discussion that we have on the article, the current conflict going in the field of psychology, of re-examining our results and past research, and reach out to me if you have any specific questions about the assignment. Don't send me an email saying, I don't understand. That is not specific enough. Try it, look up videos, find a 14-year-old, all of that stuff. Reach out to me, to them, to do this assignment. Good luck, and I will see you online. Take care.